Hello and welcome to the second part in the Small Wolf Film School's Shot Type series. I'm Paul and today we're going to be looking at how camera angles and movement all help to tell a story and create meaning, but also, hopefully, to make your scenes look really cool. Before we start looking at all the different angles and movements, we need to look at the eye level shot. This is where, as you would expect, the camera is at the same height as a person's eyes would be in the scene, making the shot look quite neutral and ordinary. It also helps us to relate to what is going on in the scene, as though we are a spectator in the same space as the characters. Nothing is implied or suggested through this shot. It is completely neutral. Let's get on to the basics. The pan or panning shot is where the camera moves from left to right or right to left around a fixed position or axis. One of the first things I was taught at university was never do a 360-degree panning shot. Not sure why, but here's a great one from Evil Dead 2. The panning shot is a great way of simply revealing something outside of your current frame or following someone that would otherwise move out of shot. In this instance, it shows the environment our character is in, how alone he is, and a potential threat to his safety. Essentially, the panning shot is a bit like having the audience turn their head from side to side. Perhaps that's why my university lecturer told me never to do it 360 degrees? Hang on. No, turns out it can be done. Another use for the pan is the whip pan, where the camera pans extremely fast from one point to the next. It's a good way of transitioning in between shots with a carefully hidden edit in between. The tilt is another simple shot, but effective when used properly. Like the panning shot, the camera stays in a fixed position whilst angled up or down on its axis. The opening shot from Star Wars is a tilt. It sets the scene, showing us the emptiness and stillness of space before revealing the planet below and the battle commencing above it. If the panning shot is like turning your head side to side, the tilt is like raising or lowering your head up and down. The high angle shot is where the camera is positioned above the subject and angled down, generally up to about a 45-degree angle. A high angle is used to make the subject look small, intimidated, scared, generally just making them look weak and powerless. In this example, the character Ash here is feeling quite scared and vulnerable because his right hand has been possessed by a demon. The low angle shot is where the camera is placed closer to the ground and angled up towards the subject, again up to around 45 degrees or so. This has the reverse effect to the high angle shot, making our character look more imposing, threatening, confident, just generally more powerful. We now return to Ash, who has solved his possessed hand problem by lopping it off and replacing it with a chainsaw. The result? He now feels more powerful and in control of the situation.
Groovy.
The tracking shot is any type of shot that follows a character or moving point of interest. Also referred to as a following shot, among other terms, a traditional tracking shot will have the camera placed on some sort of dolly system, on train-like tracks to create smooth movements. In some cases, a tracking shot may be called a trucking shot. No, not that sort of truck. This is where the camera will crab from left to right or right to left. That's right, crabbing is also a legitimate camera term too. One of my favourite uses of a tracking shot is this one from Taxi Driver.
Okay. Did you get my flowers in the...
If a tracking shot's main purpose in film is to follow the subject, what does tracking away from our main character to this empty corridor tell us? Reply in the comments if you have a theory on that. Okay, so some may say that a dolly shot is just another word for a tracking shot, and in some instances they'd be right. The terms do overlap in some areas, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to keep them as separate techniques. So, a dolly shot is where the camera is mounted to a wheeled device that normally runs on a track, much like a train track, and much like the tracking shot before. But here the camera moves towards or away from a subject. Moving towards a subject is sometimes called a push-in or character dolly, and nobody loves a push-in more than Steven Spielberg. Not to be confused with a zoom, where the camera remains stationary, the dolly shot moves the camera in space to be closer to the actor, making it a much more subtle technique. This type of shot is usually used, particularly by Spielberg, to show a character having a moment of realization or reflection, or to show that a character is going through some kind of change. We are subtly bringing the character and their emotions closer to the audience.
With the power of Grayskull.
The dolly shot can also be used to just tell a story or have a certain effect on the audience. In this shot from Hitchcock's Frenzy, the camera dollies out away from the scene of an occurring crime to show that it is going unnoticed, in broad daylight, as everyone goes about their business outside. In the context of the film, it's quite a chilling sequence, but also quite a technical accomplishment for the time, as the film crew hurriedly removed the pieces of track in front of the camera before they came into view. A crane shot is an all-encompassing term for any type of shot that is made by mounting the camera to a crane or jib device. Cranes differ in size and type, and sometimes have a camera operator sitting on top, unless using a more modern version that can be controlled remotely. One type of crane shot is called a pedestal shot. This is where the camera moves up or down a subject whilst remaining parallel to the ground. Used here to great effect by Tarantino, and years before by Danny Boyle to reveal something of great significance right underneath Ewan McGregor's character in Shallow Grave. Crane shots can also be used to create a sense of scale or wonder, and are often used to reveal a location or huge event that was previously unseen, taking the audience up high with it, allowing us to fly up and over the scene with the camera and view it from a high vantage point. By travelling this way, it feels much more dramatic than just cutting to a higher angle. The aerial shot is filmed from far above the scene at an angle, usually moving and sometimes filmed from a helicopter or other aircraft, but more commonly now with a drone. An aerial shot allows the audience to see what is going on below in an epic scale, like the crane shot but turned up to 11. Quite often an aerial shot will be used to establish a location or to help establish the world we are in. In this shot from the 2004 Dawn of the Dead, the aerial shot is used to show just how chaotic the world has become in a short amount of time. It somehow makes the event seem much more unexpected and sudden.
Avoid the stadium and proceed to other locations.
Unlike the aerial shot, the top shot looks directly down on the subject or scene rather than at an angle. This type of shot has an almost staged, artificial look to it, making the scene below look quite formal. One of the most famous top shots in film is this sequence from Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. After a violent shootout, the film's anti-hero sits motionless as we view him and the carnage from above, giving us an almost objective perspective to the aftermath of his creation. Interestingly, as the film was shot on real locations, they actually had to cut through a floor in order to achieve the shot. It took 3 months to cut the ceiling out and only 20 minutes to film the scene. A handheld shot is exactly what it sounds like. A shot where the camera is operated without any additional supports, just the camera person themselves and perhaps a shoulder rig. This gives the scene a greater sense of urgency and realism. This sequence from Mean Streets starts out as a locked off shot, but as soon as the scene turns to violence, the camera becomes handheld and moves around almost as though it is unrehearsed and the camera just happens to be capturing it, like a documentary. When done right, the handheld shot can add authenticity to a scene, making it look more gritty and real. But it's also just as likely to make susceptible audiences vomit from motion sickness. The arc shot is where the camera, usually on a curved dolly track, moves around the subject or subjects whilst keeping them in the centre of the frame. In this sequence from Brian De Palma's Carrie, Carrie White, a bullied, unpopular girl at high school, is getting to dance with the school's most popular guy at the senior prom. She is literally giddy with excitement and having been picked to dance, and the camera movement helps to visualise the feelings that she is having. And here in Hot Fuzz, Edgar Wright does it because, well, it looks really cool and it's a reference to Bad Boys and Michael Bay. Not so commonly used as it once was, the Dutch tilt or Dutch angle is a shot where the camera is slanted to one side, giving a general sense of unease. It was used a lot in horror movies to show when something was amiss, that something is not quite right with what we are seeing. Something weird and macabre is going on.
In a few moments from now, she will speak to you from where she is through this electrical machine.
It is used in exactly the same way now, but can sometimes have a certain comic book feel to it. When done badly though, you have Battlefield Earth.
Oh, you're too much!
A lot of people think that the name Dutch means that the shot originated from Holland. This isn't actually the case, as it actually derives from the word Deutsch, meaning German in the German language. The term was coined during the expressionistic period of German cinema, where the tilted camera was used in abundance. The most popular example of this is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Forever the bane of my teaching life. The zoom is a camera movement that doesn't move the camera itself, just the focal length of the lens. Essentially, what you are doing is magnifying the image rather than moving closer towards it. Zooms seem like a bit of an outdated technique now, and they are not used often because they remind the audience they are watching something mechanical. The eyes cannot zoom, but you can move your eyes closer to something, which is why a dolly shot seems more naturalistic. Zooms can be used to quite good effect when doing something a bit more cartoony and over the top, but also give a film a bit of a retro, edgy feel by using them slowly and purposefully. If you're a student filmmaker, take your finger off that zoom rocker. Randomly zooming in and out doesn't look good, trust me. Finally, the Contrazoom. Or is it a dolly zoom? Either way, this is where the camera moves position at the same time it zooms in or out. Imagine a dolly shot and a zoom shot combined into one. What is it called, a Hitchcock slide? It works one of two ways. Start with the camera far away from your subject and zoomed in. Next, move the camera smoothly towards the subject while simultaneously zooming out. This makes the subject appear in pretty much the same position and at the same size throughout, but the perspective shifts around them due to the change in the lens's focal length. The second way to do a contrazoom is to start close to the subject, zoomed out, then move the camera backwards while zooming towards the subject. Or is it called a vertigo shot? Or is it a reverse dolly zoom? Reverse dolly contra Hitchcock vertigo zoom slides are great at disorientating the viewer. This shot from Jaws is one of the most famous and perfectly sums up the moment of realization and the sinking feeling that Martin Brody has when he sees old Bruce out in the water. Oh yes, it's called a trombone shot, that's it. Or is it a zolly? Or a stretch shot? The point being, it has many names, but it always does the same thing. There are other types of movements and techniques not covered here, such as the sequence shot, which is basically a very long and elaborate tracking shot like this one from Children of Men. There are also computer assisted shots where the camera moves into impossible places. Shots where camera operators jump off buildings into windows attached to a rope. Bullet time shots, the snorri cam shot, and so on and so forth. That brings me to the end of part 2 in the shot type series. In the next part, I'll be looking at dialogue scenes, the shot reverse shot, and the 180-degree rule, amongst other things. So don't forget, subscribe so you don't miss the next video in the series, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you again in the next installment.